Well, now to the radical changes that affect everyone's credit ratings. While some changes are good, others are bad news, especially for those who can be a little behind in paying their bills. As Helen Wellings explains, we're all being watched more closely, and numbers on the credit blacklist are set to soar.
It really is Big Brother, and it's Big Brother looking at everybody's activity in a very, very fine way.
Better keep out of the red. We're all being tracked, very closely monitored on how we manage our money and how long it takes us to pay bills. New laws will make it far tougher on late payers.
Consumers, sole traders must really think about making arrangements to meet their payments on time.
If you're a few days late paying just one bill, you'll be reported to credit agencies. If you make a habit of it, you'll be blacklisted.
The message is that this payment information will be seen by credit providers, so we all need to make sure we're on top of our payments and making them regularly if we want to make sure we have the best access to credit in the future.
Steve Brown of Dun & Bradstreet, which collects information on 14 million Australians' credit files, says lenders and utilities want more information to know whether we're a credit risk or not.
If people are already overcommitted, what they're going to be able to see is a situation where people aren't meeting the existing commitments and therefore they can make alternative arrangements.
Under the new laws to be introduced in March next year, credit reporting agencies will be keeping a lot more information about our payment behaviour. If we're late paying a bill, just 5 days late, that will be recorded not as a default but as a late payment on our credit file, and that could go against us when we apply for a loan.
If someone was just a week or two late with a payment, which, let's be honest, can happen to anybody, if that's going to be enough to stop them actually getting credit in the future, I think that's a big concern.
John Dickinson of Clean Credit, which helps rectify mistakes on people's credit files, says the new laws are unfair. A Dun & Bradstreet report found that 62% of business accounts are settled late. Firms take 52 days on average to pay their bills.
Recording a late payment in as little as a week is unfair for people because I think it makes managing their cash flows extremely difficult. And we know that the damage it can cause when people actually have a negative listing on their credit file, it can potentially stop them getting credit for years.
I assume my payments were on the 21st of the month and suddenly they were changed to the 7th of the month.
Bruce Vincent went away sailing on his catamaran for a couple of weeks. When he arrived home and went to pay his bills, he found his credit card company had listed him as a default, even though he'd been a week late only that one time.
It's got to a point where I've paid them thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars worth of interest, and what do I get for that? I get blacklisted for X amount of years. I can't even borrow a small loan to buy my wife a car.
As we reported a few weeks ago, at present, if you apply to a number of lenders for a credit card or a loan, unbelievably, all those applications are recorded on your credit file, which could cause you to be blacklisted. With no information on whether or not that credit was granted or refused, you could be perceived as a risk, even though you might never have defaulted.
We were credit shopping, looking for the best quote.
Jorg Both had never missed a bill payment in his life, but was refused credit. He found he'd been blacklisted simply because he'd shopped around and applied to 5 banks for a loan.
No default, no judgment, purely a credit score that suddenly has gone into negative.
Good news, wrong and unfair listings like that won't happen under the new credit reporting laws.
The new system will allow credit providers to see which accounts were approved and are currently available to an individual.
So in some ways, more information is a good thing, but monitoring how promptly we pay our bills?
That's an example where I think this is potentially too much information and could negatively affect people. And we know that the damage it can cause when people actually have a negative listing on their credit file, it can potentially stop them getting credit for years.
And while those laws are not introduced until March next year, our payment behaviour is already being monitored and reported.